Good evening. Welcome to the October 7th remote school committee meeting. I'd like to have a roll call vote. Tom?
Aye. Here.
Carla?
Here.
Aaron?
Here.
Sean?
Here.
John?
Here.
And Chuck is here, and we have Gail and Linda from central office. The sole purpose of this meeting is to discuss and decide upon a search firm for the superintendent. So just to give some background from the last meeting, Tom and Gail and I met on Friday morning to discuss, the overall submission from each firm in terms of their written material, the oral presentations, which everyone heard, and then the subsequent references, which Gail did, and I think they all came back fine. So from weighing all of that, all of those factors, the most highly advantageous firm ended up being the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, based on their written material, the oral presentation, and the references. That was the recommendation that the committee came up, or the subcommittee came up with, at this point I can open it up to any questions or comments anybody may have. Tom?
I guess just to clarify from my perspective on the process is, if you remember the RFP, there were 8 categories for scoring, and every category had an highly advantageous, not advantageous, or negative essentially category, right? So going through each of those, the process was to score each category according to their response, and 6 of the categories tied directly to the written detail, and 1 was the presentation that we received last week, and then 1 was the references. So as a result of the presentation and the votes that this committee gave, well, we gave a 6-0 vote to NASDAQ at the presentation. That led to a highly advantageous score for them in that 1 category. Since nobody really necessarily dinged MASC, we essentially said, well, they got an advantageous score, right? They weren't negative. There was nothing really negative about their presentation or anything else along those lines, but they got an advantageous score as a result of that. So when you looked across all the categories, inclusive of all of the written material they provided, and then now the references, we looked at all the highly advantageous, all the advantageous, all the, other scores across the 3 of us, and that led to the recommendation that Mr. Robinson just put forward. So that overall, and I don't have the exact scores in front of me, maybe Ms. Dowd does, overall the highly advantageous was significantly in the favor of MASC versus NASDAQ, which led to this recommendation. So I just want to make sure there's a little bit more background there across those 8 categories that were there to provide why the recommendation is the recommendation.
Thank you, Tom. Any other comments?
Gail, are you, or maybe Chuck, are you able to share any detail around the scoring? I'm just sort of, one thing I find interesting about this approach, and I kind of understand why we take the approach that we do. It's odd to me, it's a little odd to me to weigh sort of the presentation and the kind of interactive portion of our engagement with them as, a 6th as heavy as a written, a written document that they submitted. A lot of what we're going to get from them, from whichever firm we choose, a lot of what we're going to get from them is going to be, live consultation about here's what we're trying to do, here's what we're trying to achieve, and that kind of back and forth element is really important, right? So I'm not questioning, kind of the rigor through which you guys went, which you guys applied to this, but I'm just curious, like how close are we?
You're on mute, Gail.
It's been that kind of day. So, Sean, there is no actual weighting by category. You look at each one, and we looked at, so the categories we had were their relevant experience, the lead consultant experience, their approach to ensuring community involvement, which a lot of that was a combination of what we heard during the presentation, but also the documentations that they provided us, because that was really the foundation of us moving forward, was how well their actual proposals to us were. We looked at what they detailed out, because in the RFP, we had asked them for what their approach and plan was for hiring. So we went through all of the material, looked at how they answered each of these items. We also looked at what they put forth for their recruitment materials. So there are instances in which some provided information and some just did not provide the materials that were requested. So we had to weigh all of that together to say, how was the attention to detail? Did they answer the questions we asked them to answer? Did they provide the materials within their submission package as we had asked them to do? So in going through it, how I also looked at it was, and we had talked about this when we were going through the scoring, was the attention to detail. Did they provide what we actually asked them to provide? Because we also felt that that would be an important part of this process as well. I'm not sure if that helped.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Gail, where is the actual scorecard on this? Because it's something I would have loved to have read the input per category.
Can't.
So that is part of the team that did it, but how it was all laid out within actually the RFP. So when we wrote the RFP, we wrote it in such a way that said if they provided X, Y, and Z, it was so I'll look at the approach for the hiring process. Highly advantageous was, did the proposal include a logical, clear, and comprehensive plan that addressed all the hiring process components? So we then looked at their response and said, did they hit all of these items, or did they not include a timeline? Did they not include some of the items we had asked them to include? So that was how we looked at how it was worded within the RFP for what we were asking for, looked at what the material they submitted and lined it up to the categories that way.
So John, just to expand on that, you didn't get a copy of that yet. That is within the committee, and once this process is done, that becomes a public record. But we didn't want to share that so that it was out there before the decision was made. But it is something that you'd rely on the committee, and then it becomes a public record, just to kind of protect our position. Right, Gail? I mean, that's
Correct.
kind of.
Yep.
Does that help, John? Or
I think there's a huge lack of transparency here. The committee wasn't selected in open meeting. So I'm a little worried about that portion of it, because that is an open meeting law issue if it's not. But that's fine.
So when you say we weren't selected in open meeting, we discussed that at a school committee meeting. I don't remember the date, back in August, when we decided to do this, that Tom and Gail and I would.
That's fine, Chuck. I'm going to end it there.
Okay.
So Chuck, Chuck, I don't know if this helps or not. John, I'll also, the categories that were on there, again, that were in the RFP as well, with the exact wording, right, of the RFP, right? The first one is proposer's relevant experience. And there's different categories based upon 5 years versus 3 years versus, 2 years, depending upon who the relevant experience is for the different agencies. The next one is lead consultant experience. So the person that they've highlighted as the lead consultant that we work with, do they have experience over 3 years? Do they have, 3 searches in Massachusetts? Things along those lines, right? So it's a very, A, B, C, D, type approach in that regard. The next one is proposer's approach to ensuring community involvement and input. And again, this is very much related to the written portion of it. Clear, comprehensive plan for ensuring community involvement. There's again, you have to tick all the boxes in order to get that highly advantageous, not advantageous, or unacceptable score. The fourth one is approach and plan for hiring process. And highly advantageous in that category includes a logical, clear, and comprehensive plan that addresses all the hiring process components specific in the scope of work. Again, it goes back right to the RFP. Are they answering the questions that we asked in the RFP? And includes a clearly delineated timeline with specific milestones for the Reading Public Schools superintendent search. So was there a timeline in there? Yes or no? It's pretty straightforward from that perspective. Proposes recruitment materials. Was there samples of high quality advertisements or other collateral materials that are used for the candidate outreach for at least 5? So this is where you have numbers, different superintendent searches, and at least 1 of which involved a superintendent search in Massachusetts. And then the next one, that's highly advantageous. The next one is 3 versus 5, right? So you either have 5 or you have 3. It's A or B in that regard. And as you work your way down, it becomes less and less and less, right? And then recruitment strategies, how their networks for, proposer provides more than 3 examples of how the proposer establishes networks of professional education contacts will be used in the search recruitment process, including evidence of capacity for national outreach to attract a broad and diverse and highly qualified prospective candidates. And then it steps down from national to regional and things along those lines. All this is outlined directly in the RFP. They knew exactly what they were being scored on, and filling out and responding appropriately. Again, to Gail's point, is are they paying attention to detail? Are they looking at what that rubric is and saying I'm gonna tick the box of highly advantageous in every case because I want to win this bid, right? That's what it comes down to. And I hear Sean's point of the presentation and the back and forth is one thing, but the other side of that conversation is, are they detailed? Are they going to pay attention to all the things that we're concerned about and checking those boxes appropriately? And MASC, frankly, just did a better job of checking the boxes and making sure that they said, okay, what's highly advantageous? I'm going to provide the material in my submission that aligns to the highly advantageous section. The last 2 are executive search tailored to the district. And this is really more of the presentation side of it. 3 examples of executive search recruitment showing how planning the model specifically met the needs of the particular client, and each one of those examples leading to the hiring of a superintendent. That's really where we spent more time on the presentation itself. And the last one is references. All 5 references, including 3 led by the lead consultant, were satisfied with the proposer's work and stated that all executive search tasks were completed within the time frame required. So again, it's a pretty straightforward rubric. You either do the stuff or you don't. I think it'd be a more interesting discussion if NESDEC had actually, frankly, answered all the questions in the RFP. Then we'd have a more detailed debate. But based on this rubric, it's relatively clear cut about which provider was the more complete answer in the process.
Aaron?
So just so I'm clear, when you got references, were they on Mask or were they on Dorothy and Glenn?
So the way we had, sorry, Chuck and Tom, is that
Yes.
Go ahead.
a very bad habit of just jumping in? We actually specifically, and this was another area that was interesting about the references, is we specifically asked them for references that involved the lead consultant. MASC, when they listed out their references, actually indicated which ones the lead consultants were part of, whereas the NESDEC ones were not as clear cut. So another example of adhering to how we had written it, because we did really want to understand how specific people interacted in the process. So that was part of what I was doing when I was checking with them, was to also ensure that I was asking who was, and if it didn't check the box, sort of move on to the next one, because I felt it's important to know who we'll be working with.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. And I'm glad you were able to get that information.
That was a fun 3 days.
Sean?
So no judgment here, because we're all new to this, right? Like this, you know, but in the interest of us kind of, you know, being as effective as we can be as a committee going forward, I think we might have benefited from having a discussion about what that rubric should look like and what we would prioritize in evaluating a search firm a little bit more robustly. And I take as much responsibility as anybody for not raising my hand and saying I wanted that. Because I'll give you an example. I mean, Gail, you gave the example of the schedule, right? So, you know, appreciate that Mask checked the box to include a schedule, you know, a schedule, but I actually prefer the NESDEC approach of, we're going to work with you as one of our first tasks to define the schedule that makes sense for you. Like Mask's schedule includes us doing all of our diligence in the height of our budget meetings, right? Which is probably not going to work out. So, you know, that schedule's already irrelevant in terms of it actually applying to our timeline. So anyway, so I just throw that out as an example of where, you know, I might have thought differently about what we were prioritizing or how we were going to score certain elements if we'd had a chance to have a little bit of a discussion about that. So again, I say that without judgment for this particular process. We're all kind of figuring it out, but just something to think about next time around. Hopefully there won't be one for a while.
Thank you. Carla? You're on mute.
Thank you, Gail, for doing all that work and checking out the references, and Tom and Chuck for all the work you've done on it. In terms of moving forward, do you contact the two companies and let them know where they stand, and then is that when you open the money portion of it and negotiate at that point?
So sorry, do you want me to jump in?
Yes.
So the way that process works is, once a decision is made, we do notify both. We only open the price for one, and we would then enter into discussions with the one, because the way we did this was based upon qualifications, not on price. So we can't look at it and factor that into our analysis. That would have been a different, where you went low cost, as opposed to this process looking at the overall skill set.
And that brings up a good point, that this was a RFP based on qualifications and not based on low bid. So there are certain requirements that have to be followed. So I think that's part of it too. The certain requirements have to be followed, and you guys kind of just filled in the blanks, so to speak.
And that is true, Carla. And to Sean's point, I do take that in, as much as I hope we don't go through this again in short order. I think the tricky part for people is that it's hard to really articulate that you actually can't assign a weight or a point score to each, because you could potentially write it in such a way to say, if you do this, you'll get 2 points, 3 points, but that's not how the highly advantageous process works. So that it is, when you're looking at the overall qualifications, you're really factoring in all of them pretty much equal, to say, how did you do across all categories for us to make the decision. And price, to Carla's point, is put off into the pasture. You don't factor that in until you've made your decision.
Aaron?
Just sort of related to the example that Sean gave. and again, I believe we are all new to this, but I'm going on the working assumption that this is still our process, that we still own this and control this, and they, whomever we hire, would be here to consult us and to offer their, their expertise and their time to do many pieces of it that maybe we don't all have the time or the expertise to do. But I'm assuming that we can still set our timeline, that we can still set, exactly what we're looking for in a candidate, what kind of community listening sessions we want, how much we want to break that down, et cetera, et cetera. So, in that regard, I feel very grateful to you three for, doing a lot of this legwork to get us to this point. And I'm looking forward to moving ahead with it.
And Erin, those are excellent points. And that all does become, once you get into and negotiate the contract and move forward, a lot of the information, and I had similar thoughts to Sean saying this ought to be fun in the middle of budget season. But I do think that that's when you take pen to paper once you've made the decision and you start to have those discussions. That was I'm going to use my corporate, a straw man type approach. Then when you actually sit down and you map it all out, it would be designed specifically for us with our timeline. So there is a lot of that back and forth that would happen as part of the process, if that helps.
Can I ask one more thing?
Sure.
So once we do vote tonight, and Gail, you mentioned, then we would enter into discussions regarding price. Does that mean you enter discussions? Does that mean you, Chuck and Tom, enter discussions? Are the rest of us a part of negotiating any of those pieces?
My view on that would be that once we decide who we are going to move forward with, I will work directly with Allison Jenkins on the town side to move forward with the contract wording. Obviously, that would come back. I would not do that in a vacuum. We would open the price negotiation. And I think what we would do is we have a sense of what others have gone for. We have a sense of what this typically would be. So I would imagine that unless it is something completely outside of what we're sort of anticipating, I think it becomes a matter of looking what their structure is. Is it an all-in? Is it sort of a menu approach? And then we could come back and discuss where we are with that. But I think to keep the process moving, you would most likely want to authorize the committee to enter into the contract, similar with other types of, not that this is a bus contract, but it would be a similar type of process that you would allow individuals to go in and have that. I think that would be the best approach rather than having an elongated open discussion about the pricing. But I do sense that my sense is that it'll be within the realm of what we anticipate it to be. So I don't see it being a difficult process. It's just making sure that we understand exactly what it is we're getting for what we're paying. That's what it comes down to. And that's where I will be working very closely with Allison Jenkins on the town side for the actual wording of the agreement to protect the schools.
And in terms, Erin, to your first question, in terms of the logistics of the timeline, for example, that would be done with the way I envision that is they would, once we enter into a contract with the firm, we would have that first meeting to establish all of those things with the whole committee, not with the procurement end of things. And just so everyone is aware, we were looking at a ceiling of 25,000. So it would be interesting to see, you know, what it actually is, because it better be somewhere below that ceiling. So,
Thank you.
Tom, did you have something? I thought I saw you raise your hand.
Yes, just a couple of quick things to answer Aaron's point is, yes, we will be driving the bus, for lack of a better way to say it. But they will help us by running a lot of things down, right? So whether it's reference checks or other things along those lines, the point of that is helping us with that, preparing materials, all the stuff we ask them to basically is what they would do. Ultimately, then we would come back and say, yes, that's good, or no, that's not good, and then have any other adjustments as necessary. And the other side about this, you know, to Gail's answer to a degree is we're voting tonight to award the bid, you know, not necessarily to sign the contract, right? So the vote tonight is, you know, and when I make the motion, you'll hear it, is to award the bid to MASC for the Reading Public Schools Superintendent search. And then Gail and Allison will go through the process that's necessary to put paperwork together, and at some point in the future, probably within a week, I would guess, if not sooner, you know, maybe the 15th meeting, whenever that is, we will actually vote to sign the contract or agree to the contract or something else like that after we've gone through all the necessary steps as part of the bid awarding process. So slowly but surely, we work our way through the RFP, get everything aligned, all the ducks in a row, and then we move forward from there. So with that said, Chuck, do you want me to put the motion out there?
Gail, do you need a vote, right?
I believe we were going to put the
Yep.
motion forth and then to, I think, hopefully this goes to what John Parks was referring to, is that to make sure it is a committee involved decision that we wanted to
Right.
get the committee's input for moving forward.
Go ahead, Tom.
So the motion is motion to award the bid for the Reading Public Schools Superintendent Search Consultancy to the Massachusetts Association of School Committees.
Second,
Seconded by Carla. Carla,
aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
John,
I,
Sean,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Chuck, aye. Okay. That's all the business. Thank you, everybody. And I'll see you in an hour and a half.
motion to
Another-
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn,
John with the motion, Carla with the,
second,
there you go.
John,
I.
Sean,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Carla,
aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Chuck, aye. Thank you, Gail, Linda.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
See you soon.
Bye.
Yes, now.
Aye.